Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our training on how and when to use interpreting services. We have Wendy Pease from Rapport International who will be presenting today. I do want to say thank you to Shimei Ran, who is one of our GSSC and SCO care managers, for helping to frame our discussion today. Shimei?
Yes. 大家下午好，我很高兴为大家介绍今天的培训嘉宾，来自 Rapport International 的公司总裁温迪·匹兹。Rapport International 是与我们合作的几家翻译公司之一。温迪也是最近刚刚上市的一本新书《全球营销语言》的作者。设想一下，当你完全听不懂对方的语言是一种什么样的感受？你能通过怎样的方式让你的每一位受访者听明白你的问题，并做出他们自己的选择？请大家欢迎温迪·匹兹。
很好，挺好，谢谢你，喜梅。That was such a wonderful introduction. I really appreciated it. And to all of you who don't speak Chinese, you probably realize how difficult it is when you think you're supposed to be understanding it and you don't have a clue as to what's going on. So that's what we're going to talk about today, how and when to use interpreting services. Here's the agenda for today. First, we're going to talk about definitions, because if you don't understand exactly what the words mean, you may have trouble ordering the services. And then we're going to talk about different interpreters and how they're not the same, and what kind of training an interpreter goes through, and how that really makes a difference. And then we'll talk about the buyer's journey of the different things to continue, and that can be consumer, patient, customer, whatever it is, but I'm just going to call it buyer's journey because that's kind of what it's known in the industry. Okay, so let's look at definitions first. The first thing to know is that a translator deals with written text. So you'll hear these terms, and they're like source text is the original, the target is what it's being translated into. You'll hear globalize, localize, transcreate, transliterate, all these different things. But if you're working with a good professional, they'll help you weed through what you need. So if it's websites, contracts, handouts, communications, that would all fall under translation. Interpretation is spoken. So since this presentation is about that, let's dig in there a little bit more. Now I have these separated out because we're going to be focused on the four types of interpreting that are on the one side. Simultaneous interpreting is what you'd see at a conference or the UN, people with headsets and repeating exactly what is said. Consecutive interpreting is when a person says something and the interpreter repeats it. And so it takes a little bit longer for the conversation, but this is normally how it's done because the person can't repeat live. You lose some of the interaction there. So consecutive interpreting can be live in person. It can be over the phone. It can be video on demand, like if you have, the interpreters brought in and the two people are live, or the small group. And then there's virtual interpreting where everybody's on a Zoom call or a Ring Central call or GoToMeeting or whatever it is. So these are the different types of interpreting. Now, a purpose for an interpreter. It can be easy to think that I'm going to hire any bilingual person that I can find to just help facilitate the conversation. But professional interpreters go through a lot of training. First, they learn how to be a conduit for information. And I'm going to show you some videos later on that can show some problems with interpreters if they're not trained. And they're trained to say exactly what is there. And so I like to compare it like a telephone. If you're talking on the phone, that is it's there to help conduct the conversation, but it's not adding extra things, you hope. Like if you're getting music or other conversations in the background, you got a problem with your phone. So that's like an interpreter. They're also there to clarify. If there's a situation that one of the parties doesn't understand, they can say to the other person, this person doesn't understand, so I'm going to give a little bit of cultural understanding. if there's a pain scale, or if there's a description of something, or there's a cultural difference of what's going on, they can help you with that. You just have to clearly state that this is why they're stepping out of the official interpreting role, and they're going to work in that role. And then they're an advocate to help improve quality of communication. So, if you have a consumer or customer or a patient or buyer, I'll just call buyer, that feels like they don't understand, from other services that they're not getting, the interpreter can share that information. So both parties really feel like they're connecting and communicating. Okay, interpreters are not the same. So I'd like to show this video of how interpreters can be really bad. So keep a sense of humor here.
Jesus.
You all right?
No, I'm having a bit of a nightmare, actually.
What's the matter?
Well, I've got all the international CEOs from around the world in this room. In 10 minutes, the annual summit's supposed to take place. They've flown thousands of miles to get here, and my translator hasn't turned up. I need to find someone who can translate into 7 different languages.
Well, I can do that. Yeah, I did a TEFL in my gap year.
Welcome back to London, ladies and gentlemen. This is Helen Marsh, who'll be our interpreter today. So, without further ado, let's address section 1.1, multinational profiteering for the financial year 2005-2006. Helen.
Hurdy-gurdy-gurdy. Hurdy-gurdy-gurdy-gurdy. Gurdy. Oh, bud. Oh, bud. Che cosa ta dici, vado how are you? This is not my sandwich.
So as much as I watch that, I still chuckle. It is so funny. It really captured something. So we will talk about a little later on, when you're in a bad situation, what do you do about it? And so, if you're having friends and family and bilingual bystanders there, like, it may not be as obvious to you that there's bad translation going on, but there are so many problems that you can run into. I mean, number one is the confidentiality. In certain situations, and that one was certainly true, from the topic they seemed like they were going to be talking about, is you have to keep confidentiality. And then if you're dealing with any medical information, that's protected by HIPAA. I've heard of situations where a child or a friend will be in there and they're translating material that really the person should be getting, or information the person should be getting, but the child or the friend or family gets it, and immediately right there, confidentiality is blown. And I've also seen that, I've heard about, I haven't seen it, a Chinese child trying to protect his elder and not sharing all the information. And so where you think that it might be, the message could be changed. And so that's a risk because you think you're sharing something. A professional translator is taught to repeat everything word by word, like we were talking the conduit earlier. So you make sure that's coming through. There's a certain level of professionalism. The people that are trained interpreters know when to ask for clarification. They know when to step aside. I know of a situation where a doctor was in a hurry. He came in to provide services for a woman in the hospital. He saw the housekeeper there. He said, you know, oh, I know she speaks English and Portuguese because I've spoken with her before. He called her in. The woman told the patient that she needed stomach surgery. And the woman was flipping out because she didn't have any problems. So to be told she needed stomach surgery was scary. But luckily, the interpreter arrived at the right time and said that the doctor had said pap smear, not stomach surgery. So the housekeeper saw the doctor as somebody that you didn't question, and she didn't know the word. So rather than asking for clarification or saying she doesn't know the word, she just put in there what she could do. And so it caused a real big problem. You know, and there's a clarity issue that can happen. One of our interpreters wrote a really good discussion blog about the difference for when he's interpreting for his wife versus when he's doing it professionally. So you can find it on our website, but it's fascinating because he slips into husband and, you know, person who loves the patient. And so he was kind of screening or clarifying and realized he wasn't using all his professionalism like he would if he was a step away from what's going on. So if you're using friends, family, or bilingual bystanders, be really careful. And we're going to talk a little bit about the liability and the law around it. And then on training, interpreters go to very intensive training programs to learn where to stand, what to say, confidentiality, professionalism, what to do in difficult situations. So they have a lot of training on this, like you know, just any bilingual person wouldn't get. So I give them a breakdown here because if you're using friends and family to provide services, you may not be giving them a much needed break that, you know, that if you have a bilingual, if you have an official translator coming in to help you with any appointment situations or meetings. So training does make a difference. Interpreters are taught where the right positioning to be at. So if you see here, you've got two men who are talking to each other, and the interpreter is the woman that's behind. What this does is allows for the two people who are speaking to have eye contact and speak in first person. So they look like, you know, they can look at each other, they can watch each other's body motion, and they feel like they're speaking with each other. The interpreter's in the back and facilitating the conversation. I mentioned first person. So, you know, instead of saying, can you ask the person what her birthday is, you know, you would just say, what is your birthday? And then the patient, client, buyer, whoever is replies back, my birthday is. So it's not the interpreter saying, he said to ask you what your birthday is. That'll just extend it, and it doesn't make that immediate connection. The interpreter is also going to use the exact warning. So they're going to say, even if it's swear words or if it's anger at you or if it's anything else, they're going to repeat it exactly. Now, they're trained not to do it with all the emotions and everything that go into it and the hand gestures. So it may be kind of weird just hearing if somebody's angry to hear the voice, but you're getting the information because you can watch the other person's body language and gestures. You want to remember to talk slow and relaxed and to only give a bit of information at a time, because the interpreter is listening to everything you say and then putting it into the appropriate context and repeating it. So you want to talk in maybe 1 or 2 sentences and then stop and let the interpreter repeat it. If you talk really fast and don't give breaks, that's going to be hard for the interpreter to make sure they remember everything and relay that. And I just talked about the gestures and the voice intonation. They're not going to do that because you should be looking at the person that you're communicating with. Okay, so now that we've talked through the training, here's a fun little video. And I want you to watch it and pick out what you think is going wrong here.
They say the language of love has no barriers, and this may be true until you try proposing marriage. Well, Jonathan Routh has this problem. His girlfriend is Cypriot and doesn't speak English. Jonathan doesn't speak Greek, so he's called in this Greek interpreter to help with the marriage plans. The Cypriot girlfriend is played by our own Eve Adam.
Where does she come from, if I may ask?
She comes from Cyprus.
Cyprus, specifically.
I cannot pronounce the name of the place, I'm afraid.
Yes.
But we met on a Greek holiday last year.
In Cyprus or
no, in Greece,
Yes.
on the island of Crete. And we had a wonderful time together there, and now she's come over to... and here she is. Christine. Oh, lovely to see you. This is Miss Papadopoulos.
Παυλίδης, μάλλον.
Χαίρομαι πολύ. Τι κάνετε?
Καλά.
Καλά.
Ήθελα να βοηθήσω εδώ γιατί δεν ξέρει ελληνικά.
Ναι, το ξέρω αυτό. Και εγώ δεν ξέρω αγγλικά, δυστυχώς.
She doesn't speak English at all.
Would you tell my fiancée that I'm overjoyed to see her?
Είναι πολύ χαρούμενος που σε είδε, λέει. Είναι ευτυχής τώρα που σε είδε.
Εγώ όμως όχι τόσο.
She says, myself not so much.
She is a little reticent sometimes in front of other people, I think. Not only am I overjoyed to see her, but I'm most anxious to know whether she still feels about me the same way as she did when we last met.
First time.
Yes.
Λέει ότι όχι μόνο είναι υπερχαρούμενος που σε είδε, αλλά θέλει να μάθει αν εσύ αισθάνεσαι το ίδιο όπως αισθανόσουν τον καιρό που τότε την τελευταία φορά που ειδωθήκατε.
Εγώ αισθάνομαι το ίδιο, ναι. Δηλαδή δεν μου αρέσει καθόλου αυτός ο άνθρωπος.
She feels very strongly in favor of me, I think.
Well, he says, yes, he feels the same. He doesn't like you so much, he says.
Oh, I think she has a great sense of fun.
Λέει, αστείευεσαι φαίνεται, λέει.
Αστείευομαι πολύ, παιδί, ναι, ναι.
Anyway, I am eagerly looking forward to our wedding.
Λέει, περιμένει να παντρευτείτε, λέει.
Παντρευτούμε.
Ναι, έτσι λέει. She seems a bit surprised.
I expect she is a little excited at the prospect. Wouldn't any girl be surprised at her? What I want to find out from her is whether she wants our wedding to be in the English countryside or in an English town.
Ναι, λέει, πού θέλεις να είναι ο γάμος σου, στην εξοχή ή στο αυτό.
Με έχει σκάσει, το ξέρει. Κοιτάξτε να του πεις. Πρώτα απ' όλα, να πάει και αυτός να είναι έτσι ωραιοντημένος και σαν εσάς. Αυτός κοίταξε τον γύφτος είναι, δεν τον βλέπεις γύφτος. Να του πεις είναι γύφτος.
So I think you get the idea of that. It goes for a few more minutes. It's a candid camera on YouTube, so you can find it. You could just search for the interpreter or let me know. And so what the couple of good things that they did is the man met with the interpreter beforehand and told him what was going on. So that was perfectly appropriate. And then there were introductions at the beginning. So the things that were bad is the positioning. Look at how the interpreter is center stage. They're both looking at him. They're using third-party language, third-person language where they're saying, tell him, tell. The interpreter is not using a faithful echo. And nobody's really listening to each other. And the man, the to-be groom isn't even listening to what the responses are saying. So it was a setup on candid camera for the interpreter, so it is quite funny and a perfect example of what not to do. So let me see. I'm having trouble. Okay, so training does make a difference. So that, you know, somebody who's not a trained interpreter could easily get into that situation. And I do want to point out a few things. It is the law for any agency or any organization that gets federal funding to provide interpreters. It's a law. And so you have to think about your agency and if you're complying with the law anytime you might use a friend and family. And there has been liability cases. There was a medical malpractice suit of an 18-year-old who was a baseball player and passed out, and the family didn't speak Spanish, and they were also very respectful of the doctor. And so the word that they used, they were saying that he passed out. The hospital staff understood that it was an overdose. And so the doctor was treating for an overdose, and they didn't pull a neurosurgeon in for days. And by the time he woke up, he was a quadriplegic, and earlier medical care would have helped. So you do want to think about any liability that you may run into. The UX is the user experience or the customer experience, and you want to think about that. I'm going to go through that in another slide about all the touch points that you need to do it. And DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And, you know, if your mission statement, like this one does have, it's that you're there to empower and advocate for those impacted by aging and disability, and you offer information supportive services that enhance health, well-being, and independence. Well, that's right there in your mission statement, is to provide information, and you want people to be able to understand. So there's lots of reasons to make sure you're hiring a trained interpreter. Okay, so say you're in a situation of either one of the videos that I showed earlier and it's not working. Okay, so what do you do about this? Because I have heard people talking about this. If you find that the interpreter is going off on sidebar conversations, either with you or the person you're trying to talk to, you are the boss of the situation, and you can ask the interpreter to stop and repeat exactly what is said, and then remember to give short bits, and and have the interpreter ask the other person to give short bits so the interpreter can repeat exactly. You can make sure you're right, you're facing the client the right way. You can clarify your expectations before you go in, like at the start of the candid camera thing where there was some introductions and what the meeting was going to be about. So you can say, I want you to repeat exactly what is said. I want you to be in this position. I don't want sidebar conversations, and I want you to talk in first person, and they should know that. And so this is really a reminder that you're in control of the situation. If the interpreter doesn't follow what you've asked, you definitely want to reach back out to us and let us know so we can give more training to the interpreter or not schedule them in the future if they're not doing professionally what they need to be. So I put this in here. It's a silly Dilbert comic just to remind you that if you're using jargon and big words and confusing sentences, that's going to be really hard for the interpreter. So where you have expectations of the interpreter does appreciate if you speak very clearly. Okay, so the buyer's journey, and I talked about what the buyer means. And if you think about from the first time somebody comes into your organization to all the touch points they have along the way, you want to make sure that you're providing information in language so people understand. So the first point is the receptionist. And the receptionist can have a little note card next to her or him that has just a moment or wait a minute translated in all the different languages, and then get a telephone interpreter on the line. You just have to dial an 800 number, give your code to the operator, and then get somebody on the phone within 20 seconds. If you don't know the language, as soon as you get the operator on the line, they can help you identify the language. Then you want to think about, is there information and referral departments and the initial assessments, program referrals, all the touch points along there. Do you need telephone interpreting? Is it a video call? Is it a live interpreter that you need? And then think about scheduling. If there is a lot of information on any of this that can go through in-person visits, think about what you could translate that you use over and over again. So rather than having to scramble and get an interpreter, you might be able to hand a brochure to somebody or send them to your website. Keep the information in multiple places so people have access to it. So just think about, how do you make it easy for the other person? It may be easiest for you to say, oh, good, their son, daughter, sister, brother, spouse, whoever is going to be there to do the interpreting. But remember about all the liability and the laws. So how can you set up a process to make sure that it's easy to schedule and easy to get the information? You can even keep information with you and on your phone to make it simple. So the first place you want to capture in the process on how to do it effectively is, at reception or the intake, mark down the language in the record that the person needs, and then everybody down the line can go in there and see exactly what language they need, and they don't end up calling and then finding out that they need a telephone interpreter on the line to help facilitate the conversation when they could have known for the first. You want to have an interpreter for every encounter, even making delivery to the person, like Meals on Wheels. And if you're telling the English speakers that they're getting 2 meals for today because there's a snowstorm coming tomorrow, if you're telling your English speakers that, you want to tell your people who don't speak English so they understand what's going on. And again, you might be able to have information that's packed with the meal that goes right on. Keep your language access easy. We have the point to your language cards. We've got know your rights for free interpreter. You want to make sure that you're providing this, showing people this, because they may not know they're entitled to a free interpreter. And so you want to let them know so they're not saying my son can do it or my daughter can, friends, family, whoever can do it because they think they don't have the money to pay for it. And then add the contact to your phone for how to schedule a live interpreter or how to get the telephone interpreting line right on there. So if you run into a situation, you can handle it immediately. And so then for number 4, as we talked about any material that can be reused, translate it and reuse it and reuse it. And it saves you a lot of money on having to schedule and, money and time scheduling and hiring a live interpreter. So there is some we have a video on our website with Nathan from our office, and if you call in, there's a good chance you'll talk to him. So you can go to our rapporttranslations.com and search for interpreting, telephone interpreting, and you can come up with this video and listen to it if you want to learn more about how to schedule an interpreter and what scenarios to use it. Since Shimei did the introduction at the beginning, and you might not have understood, I am president and owner of Rapport International, where we provide high quality language translation and interpretation services. I won't get into all the services. You just need to know we do from one language to another. We'll help consult with you on whatever you need, whatever whatever we call it, we'll make sure you get what you need. We've got 100% satisfaction guarantee. And we're going to make sure that you get taken care of. We got your back. These are different ways you can contact me if you have questions. I am all over social media, so you can find me anywhere there. Linktree down under my picture. Wendy Pease has all my links, so if you want to know more than enough about me or all the access points, that's the easiest place to go. If you love language and culture, I host the Global Marketing Show, and it's more than just marketing. It's about global, multilingual communications, mistakes, favorite words, and ways to communicate across languages. So love to have you listen to that and leave me a review or, give me a star rating on that. and these are all our contacts for Rapport International. We post a lot of information about language. So if you like it, go ahead and follow us. So any questions, certainly reach out and let us know. We're here to help. I am absolutely passionate about global, multilingual, and cultural communication. So thanks so much. I hope you learned something today.
If you found this video helpful, please share it, leave a comment, and subscribe. If you like hearing fun language and culture facts and goofs, use the link below to subscribe to our bi-monthly Tidbit newsletter. And of course, visit our website for more information or to schedule a free translation assessment.